My rules, big moves. Y'all heavy on the tweeting. I'll disappear a whole season like, who said they looking for me? I'ma make you wait for it. Count down for me. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back to Hold My Heels, the Power of Unapologetic Living podcast. I'm Dr. Ajax, and welcome back to the Sister Circle. Today, we're going to talk about the Sapphire stereotype, and I'm going to start off with a quote that I found doing my research it was pretty powerful to me. The Jim Crow Museum states, the Sapphire stereotype is a harsh portrayal of African American women, but it is more than that. It is a social control mechanism that is employed to punish Black women who violate the societal norms that encourage them to be passive, servile, non-threatening, and unseen. As Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham portrayed when she coined politics of respectability, the only way for Black women to combat racism and misogyny is to adhere to conservative moral values. But whose moral values are Black women conforming to? Well, let's talk about them. Family and marriage, basically, give that man 2.5 kids and a nice home. Religious faith, let that man see you at church. Sexual morality, only like one man at a time. Personal responsibility, live right without the help of the man. Respect for authority, listen to the man. Work ethic, work hard for the man. And modesty, don't be out here showing out for the men. Those are the moral values that Black women are supposed to be conforming to. Now, I'm with you in saying those aren't so bad at all, but also respectability politics. In order for us to be seen as women, we have to conform to this standard. And we can have debates all day long about what culture says and what was happening when we were kings and queens and, how the world works and how other countries, handle matriarchy and patriarchy. Like, we can have that conversation, and we will. But today we're going to talk about the good old Sapphire stereotype, because we know that in the Black community, we really believe that people are to be seen and not heard. And that is from our stint in the slavery era and Christianity. But that's even a story for another day. We're not going to talk about it, y'all. I told y'all I wasn't going to be super religious on here, but one day I'm going to talk about that. Now, y'all know how I feel about respectability politics. So color me intrigued when I realized that the Sapphire stereotype was built out of the desire to control the Black woman through the Black man. This is why I split the Sapphire and the angry Black woman stereotype, because I believe that they are nuanced, especially in our modern culture, and that the angry Black woman is typically cast in work settings and Sapphire is cast in public spaces. Now, I like definitions because common language is important to me. So Sapphire is portrayed as your resident gum-popping, finger-waving, neck-snapping, loud and colorful woman or femme. Think of your favorite Black girl bestie on any white-centered TV show or movie. But wait, there's more. You can also think of many of your favorite Black-centered shows as well. Here's looking at you, reality TV franchises, and some of our favorite Black shows. I'll let your mind bring a few to the forefront. While the angry Black woman is a Black woman who is trying to do her job and deals with microaggressions and their impacts while trying to navigate these conflicting expectations of respectability politics and self-identity, while striving to maintain their authenticity and professional growth. See, inside, outside. Because if you're not outside, where you at? We at work, right? So, hey, did you call somebody about therapy yet? No? You still haven't? Okay. So, since obviously you need me to help you with this, I need you to go online to therapyforblackgirls.com or mybblacktherapist.co and find a therapist. Because if we're really going to heal as a community and as individuals and as people, we got to talk to the people. We got to go see the lady so she can help us, okay? Because we can't just keep saying that, this is who I am. We have to actually grow and, get better. So I'm going to keep asking you every time. And until somebody calls me and says, girl, I did go to therapy, I'm going to keep asking y'all. So y'all better tell somebody to call me. Now, in today's episode, we're going to continue our 4-part series on stereotype threat affecting Black women. But there's an unexpected bonus. I'm going to turn this into a 5-part series. Previously, we explored the Superwoman and the angry Black woman stereotypes in our episodes. Get big, no magic needed, and it's Dr. Jackson because you're nasty. I will be adding in the Jezebel stereotype, a topic I plan to expand on in a future series, but one I didn't want to overlook in our current discussions. So as we delve into these stereotypes, I have to admit that I had to check my own bias, because much of the literature I encountered was steeped in notions of respectability, prompting me really to reflect on like my own experiences. Like, there have been moments where under the right circumstances, somebody might have called me a sapphire. I could have been perceived as loud, aggressive, and emasculating. And I need for us to really acknowledge this and require us to critically examine our own judgments and bias. And a lot of the research is definitely geared towards how this stereotype impacts the Black community and the Black family. So bear with me, y'all. So in this paper, I will argue that the Sapphire stereotype is particularly divisive, crafted to pit Black men against Black women, and to stand as the antithesis of traditional femininity and a further aid to keep the Black family and community at war and on edge. Let's get into the research. This stereotype definitely has its beginnings after slavery and was meant to show Black women as harsh and strong-willed. This was the same time that white women were beginning to be portrayed as the epitome of femininity. It was a cruel way to continue to keep both of these parties, white women and Black women, at odds as they tried to fight for their own way and respect. This stereotype began being portrayed through minstrel shows and movies. Like, think of films where you had these soft-spoken, small-frame white women juxtaposed to heavier, loud, and boisterous Black women. These Black women were sassy and able to be quick-tongued with the white families they were caring for, while being unable to fully care for their own families. One of my favorite movies and books is The Color Purple. This work of art perfectly showcases the Jezebel, the Mammy, the Sapphire, and the idea of a feminine woman in the main characters. And we see how the Black man was used to uphold patriarchy and misogyny by the control that they exerted over these women characters. So when we wrap up this 5-part series, I will actually delve deeper into that particular movie because it is one of my favorite movies. And I think it does, like I said, a really good job of breaking it down. And I just, I love to look at somebody and tell them that they're not going to never have nothing until they do right by me. So that's just my thing. Now, the majority of this research has shown that this stereotype was really to push the agenda of the Black man losing power to the Black woman and her emasculating him in their interactions. Some might venture to say that this was the beginning of the media support of the war on the Black family. If we think about the show Amos and Andy, which was originally created by 2 white men who pretended to be Black men in stereotypical fashion and you'd react in stereotypical situations and use what people, I guess, would say was Black voice. It was the birth of, and I use that term loosely, the birth of the role of Sapphire. I mean, the lady's name was Sapphire Stevens and her husband's name was Kingfish. And Kingfish was cast as a man who was a swindler, a con artist, who was unkind, who was lazy. And Sapphire had to consistently yell at him and tell him, get your crap together. You're not no good. You're not this or whatever. So it was always this finger wagging idea because her husband wasn't, anything good. And so thankfully, the NAACP, or the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, for those who are new here, really fought to have the show removed because they said it really impeded the civil rights movement because as people were trying to break away from these stereotypes and this behavior that people thought about Black people, it was being portrayed in the media on a weekly basis. So it was a lot of work that had to be done to dismantle this. And that work has not stopped yet. And Patricia Bell Scott's 1977 study called Debunking Sapphire Toward a Non-Racist and Non-Sexist Social Science, she challenged the historical basis and validity of these stereotypes, right? She traces the origins of the notion of a Black matriarchy to early 20th century scholars like Du Bois and Fraser. And she really pushed towards the social problems narrative that gained popularity in the 60s with the Moynihan report. And I hope to God I'm pronouncing his name wrong because he deserves all of that. But her research aims basically to dismantle these stereotypes by offering a perspective on that this is racially and sexually biased foundations, which the Sapphire stereotype sits on. And it continues to contribute to Black women's mental, emotional, and physical ailments as they are navigating in this world. And so I want to take a second because I don't know if you remember the Moynihan report, but basically it was like the family structure of Black people is bad because all these Black single mothers are raising these delinquents and they're living in poverty and they have lower levels of education, and this matriarchal family system where it's being led by women, it undermines the role of Black men as leaders in their families and communities. But yet, the reason that the Black men aren't in the community and family is because of things like the crack epidemic or slavery or systemic racism. So it's almost like the system was built this way and they created this character to make Black men feel, once again, that they weren't stepping up and doing their job. Now, this also was like this idea that the Black community was dependent on welfare and had social problems. And, he tried to say that it was due to racial inequality, but he laid a lot of that blame and problem at the feet of Black women instead of where it actually needed to be. Do you remember how Reagan portrayed the welfare queen? Remember how he said that she was a lying, scheming, flamboyant woman who drove a Cadillac in Chicago? And I don't know why Cadillacs got such a bad deal in that, but what? And we know the statistics now on the people who are actually abusing and overusing the system. Here's looking at you, Brett Favre. But, we still need to be able to trace this back and see how, everybody wants to pretend that the Sapphire wasn't meant to destroy the Black family. It literally was. It was created out of this idea of, because Black women are stepping into these places of authority in the family, this means that the Black man's not able to do his job. Now, I want you to understand that this has not stopped. This research continues to go on. It has been revamped in 2000 and further. And there's two papers that I want to talk about really quickly. The first one is by Nisha Grayman Simpson. She wrote a paper entitled Sapphire, Exploring the Power of a Popular Stereotype. And Elias Stevenson in his paper entitled Impacts of the Sapphire Stereotype Seen on Reality Television and College-Age Black Women. Both of these research papers concluded that the Sapphire stereotype represents a deeply ingrained racial character within American media and culture, describing Black women as loud, aggressive, and emasculating figures, characterized by, you guessed it, flamboyant attire, striking hairstyles, vibrant fingernails. This image is crafted to demand attention and assert the presence of Black women in a manner that is both unavoidable and confrontational. So think about this. As Black women are coming into their own, where they're being artistic in the way they do their hair, the way they wear their nails, the way they wear their clothes, it's all being seen as them trying to, look at me. I need to be the focus of attention. It's continued portrayal. And we can see it in shows like The Bad Girls Club, all of the Housewives franchise, The Real World. They always portray the Sapphire front and center. And now, mind you, these shows also cast women of all races, and they show their bad behavior too. But if you think about any episode that you've seen, they are highlighting Black women, and in the center of this is some of the craziest stuff that's happening. Even if you think about shows like Married to Medicine, these are women who are or are married to men who are doctors, and they portray them in this negative light all the time. So now, you can't necessarily say, oh, this is racist, because you're like, what is actually happening? But it is the portrayal of the Sapphire character, right? Now, a lot of academic circles, are starting to link this to harmful social dynamics where Black women are unfairly seen as needing control and supervision due to their assertive demeanor. And this is highlighted in a lot of research, and they talk about the interpersonal abuse and societal power structures that come from this. Creating an image of a person who the world feels like they need to be controlled or they need to be supervised will only create a system where somebody is mistreated and mishandled. I'll say those words. Now, this is where I might miss some people, and some people might lose their insight with me, or they might be like, oh, she just talking, or you might want to come and take my podcast mic, but you don't know where I'm at, so you can't come get it, so just deal with it. But I want you to walk with me for a second, seriously. Like, I'd like for us as the Black community to see the Sapphire character as a great example of patriarchy and how it is to get the Black man to align and uphold systemic and cultural racism. Now, I know if some people I hear that's going to be like, the Black man can't uphold systemic racism because they Black too. And they're just as beat down and bogged down by the system as Black women. And I'm going to ask you to be so for real and put on your non-rose colored glasses and look at the tea leaves with me for a second. In episode 1, I told you that in order for systemic racism to stay strong, there has to be structures in place and institutions willing to do the work. Black men can definitely uphold systemic racism through patriarchy and misogyny. I just told you that the Sapphire image is a social control mechanism that is employed to punish Black women who violate the societal norms that encourage them to be passive, servile, non-threatening, and unseen. The system was built to control the unruly and disruptors. So if microaggressions are used in the workplace, how do you think we are supposed to be controlled at home? Like, think for a second. Now, you know, I'm going to give you definitions because people don't like to believe me when I just say what needs to be said. Patriarchy is a social system in which men hold power and dominate in roles of political leadership, moral authority, social privilege, and property control, often resulting in the subordination of women. Okay. Misogyny, deep-seated prejudice against women, manifesting as discrimination, hostility, or ingrained biases that devalue and subjugate females. I don't know if you've been on Beyonce's internet lately, but there are a lot of men who get on her internet and talk about how I don't date Black women because they're loud and they're aggressive and they're this and they're that. And you want to look at them and be like, but is your mama? Because your mama Black. But you don't say that. And if you do, you got banned on Facebook and you did a 30-day bid. Don't ask me how I know. But it's happening. The divisiveness is happening because the idea is that if you are not seen as meek, mild, timid, quiet, submissive, you're not a real woman. You don't deserve to be protected and supported. And it just creates a cycle of abuse and neglect. Now, I want you to think about this. Have you ever heard of the brute stereotype? You know, the Black man that is inherently violent, hyper-masculine, and sexually aggressive. The one that people say are a danger to society. What if I told you, in my opinion, that this stereotype was created to be the enforcer of controlling Sapphire? Because we know who the enforcer of the brute is. Both of these stereotypes are meant to dehumanize and justify control over Black bodies. Now, in my opinion, remember that this is all my opinion, heavily researched and supported with peer review articles, but nonetheless, my opinion. I say this because we know that Black men's ability to form patriarchal roles is deeply influenced by systemic racism, right? And has disrupted the traditional family structures and withheld the Black man's full ability to fall into the role of provider and protector. This has been happening since slavery, and it has not stopped yet. Now, think about this. Black enslaved men used to have to watch their wives and children beaten, raped, sold off, and killed, especially if they tried to protect or provide for them, especially if they stood up to stop something from happening to them. But it did not stop there. We also know that many times, based on research and lived experiences and recounting of those lived experiences, that if a slave owner wanted to really put a Black slave in his place, he would rape him in front of his family and his children to show who was in power. If that's not emasculating, if that's not taking the ability for a man to protect, provide, and lead for his family away, I don't know what is. Now, if we are talking about the emasculation of Black men and, it's the prevalent as a means to control and dominate, right? It's to be able to keep people where they're supposed to be, stay in your place. So we've seen this in slavery. We saw this during the crack epidemic and the mandatory prison sentences. And we're seeing this now in these gender wars. All of these historical issues has put us in a place that challenges Black masculinity. In current times, we see the systemic obstacles like high unemployment, incarceration rates, and violence hindering their role, right? And it hinders their role in their families and in their communities. Have you ever heard the phrase, shit runs down hills? It's this idea that if something happens to the top, all of that bad rolls down, to the smallest unit in a situation. So think about this. If I'm a man and I go to work and the world beats me down and tells me that I'm no good and is always trying to keep its boot on my neck, when I get home and I see my wife, where do I put that frustration, right? So the saying is so the husband gets, crapped on at work. He comes home and he craps on the wife, and then the wife craps on the kids, and then the kids crap on the dog because the shit has to run downhill. Like the frustration has to leave. That is part of a cycle to keep people controlled and forever in the idea of if I can't be in control at work, if I can't be in control in these other spaces, if I have to always hang my head and do what somebody else tells me to do, then somebody else is going to have to do that too. And I want us to think about this, right? In this system, there is a hierarchy. And whether we want to believe it or whether every Black man wants to believe it, we are all in a spot where, it's a pattern. The pattern is man, woman, man, woman, man, woman. Is the white man better than the Black man? No. But does the white man have more control than the Black man most times? Yes. If we are being honest, that extends into the circle of life. That's how this system was built. That's what America was built on. Who is in control and who is in power? Now, I'm not going to have a lived experience this episode because I don't like to delve into trauma porn. And I think that that's exactly what a lived experience in this situation would be. I had somebody who was willing to talk about how they were considered the Sapphire in a situation, and they had a man come in and try to control that. And it became very ugly and very nasty. And I don't want to portray that or perpetrate that stereotype at all. But what I want us to do is I'm going to call us to action today, right? Knowing what we know about systemic racism, knowing what we know about the idea that they want the Sapphire to be this controlled person, right? Somebody who is constantly having to be told what to do, having to be put back in place, having to be kept in line, and them using, the structures in place to do it. How do we as a community recognize it and stop it? And I want you to think about this. During slavery, during the crack epidemic, during these responses to these systemic issues, the Black man has been pulled out of the home. He has not been allowed to really lead, serve, and protect. And so Black women have had to step up to the plate, right? They've had to come in and be the bread earner, and they've had to be both, and I'm using this term, I want you to understand, father figure in the home, or the disciplinarian, or the person who takes the role of provider and protector, and not gotten to be soft and, in a lot of ways, the feminine side to a household. And I want us to understand that as Black women, we've never wanted to be in that space there was a time where we wanted to be at home and we wanted to take care of our family and our husbands, and we wanted to have the life that we believe that we deserve, where it's a two income household, it's a two loving parents in the situation. And that was robbed from us in many instances. And then we were turned on each other. The idea of, well, you have a Black man who is a father and, he goes away for whatever reason and he comes back, and the Black mother has had to, raise the children on her own and take care of the family on her own. And there's a tendency to be territorial and protective of that because you've been doing it, not because you don't believe that the person that hasn't been doing it can't do it. It's just, if I've had to carry this burden for so long without help, and I've been told, we know the research says that there was a time in this country that, the welfare office would come to your house and tell you that they give you extra money if you put your husband out, right? And when you have to think about, am I going to feed my family, or am I going to stand here by this man who is being beaten down by the system and he can't get a good job and he's not being able to get the, things that he needs to do, and he, police brutality forever, Jim Crow, all of the things. It was a divisive technique that is continuing to work. So the next time you encounter a Black woman that you feel is embodying the Sapphire character, I want you to step back and I want you to ask, what has created that in her? What has pushed her to a space where she is exhibiting this defense mechanism? I want you to not immediately disregard her or throw her away. I want you to really think about, how has the system betrayed her and neglected her and neglected the Black man in that situation? So that's what I want you to think about. I want you to really and truly understand that until we come together as a community, we can't get better. And if we allow the world to tell us, these stereotypes are who we are, we can't get better. So that's the call to action. A, go to therapy. B, think about, as you experience these stereotypes, how can you help navigate that system? What can you do to break a little bit of that hold? And I will say this, if we are hell-bent on controlling one another, we will always be in a state of anger and bitterness and strife. And that is not where we deserve to be. We do not deserve struggle. We do not deserve harm. And until we band together as a community, we will not be able to move forward. So, in closing, remember, every step you take is truly a testament to your strength and your grace. Keep striding forward, hold your head up high, and never forget you've got someone to hold your heels or a shoulder to cry on when it's truly needed. I hope you conquer your world today. Until next time, stay empowered, stay you, and slay in your own personal way.
Yeah, I'ma make you pay